The day begins in a silence that is not truly silent. It is the thin hour before dawn, when the air is cool and damp, and the lamps along the road have burned themselves down to wicks and smoke. A rooster breaks the thinness. Somewhere a gate bolt scrapes metal. Dogs cough, tug their chains, and settle again. Then the first voice calls from the farm court, a rough voice flat with sleep, and the silence ends. Feet move, doors open, keys jingle. The world of masters yawns. The world of slaves snaps to attention. This is the Roman Empire not as marble, but as brick, dust, and breath. We are somewhere in central Italy, in the 1st century after Christ, on a broad country estate that feeds a city and fills account tablets with neat lines of numbers. It could be any estate, Latium, Campania, Etruria. What matters is the pattern. Fields stretch in long strips, vines twist along rows, olive trees wait for picking season. In the center stands a great house of tile and painted plaster. Beside it, lower and darker, are the work buildings, the press, the barns, the sheds, and then, half sunk in ground like a cellar with bars for windows, the ergastulum, the slave barracks and prison. At the threshold of that building, a man with a lamp unlocks a door. The light rolls out in a dull yellow circle, catching faces that are already awake. Some have slept sitting, some flat on the floor, some chained to others. Ankles bear iron, a few necks wear iron too, collars engraved with words like a wound that never heals. I am a slave, hold me. If I flee, return me. A guard with a stick and a ring of keys tells them to stand. No one asks for more sleep. No one asks anything at all. In this place, questions are dangerous. Our story is about punishments, about how Rome kept people afraid enough to work, quiet enough to obey, broken enough to be useful. But if we begin with the lash, we will miss the first chain. The first chain is not iron. It is the rule written into the bones of the household. The master has power over life and death. The law calls it potestas. It flows from the father of the family down through stewards and overseers to the edge of the fields. It sits at the table in the bright atrium, and it stands at night outside the ergastulum door. It is old, older than the Republic, so old that most people in this world do not imagine a house without it. Because it is old, it feels natural. Because it feels natural, no one in power questions it. That is how the first chain works. Inside the ergastulum, the steward counts. He is not the master, he is a slave made overseer, villicus, because he is trusted or has learned to be cruel enough to be useful. His wife, the vilica, manages the women's tasks. He keeps tallies on wax tablets, he measures grain, he weighs olives, he writes names, he also carries a rod and can use it. In a few hours the master will walk the yard, cloak over his shoulders, drinking cup warm to his hand. He will ask the steward about yields and theft, about a broken plough, about a neighbour who offered too little for a strip of land. They will speak in calm words. What happens in the barracks stays in the barracks, unless it does not, unless some offence rises so high that it must be turned into a lesson for everyone. The men and women file out. They pass a stone basin. They wet their faces. They receive a ration of barley porridge, sometimes bread, now and then a piece of salted fish. They eat quickly, standing. The sky is grey. The fields are darker grey. The steward divides them by task. Some go to the vineyard to tie new shoots, some to the olive groves with pruning knives. Some carry baskets for manure. 2 are sent to the mill to turn a heavy stone, shoulder to wood, walking in a circle until salt crystals crust at the corners of their mouths. A boy, no, not a boy in years, but boy in station, is sent with a donkey and a rope to fetch water from the stream. In the city, a similar order moves in workshops, kitchens and bathhouses. Rome runs on oil, grain and muscle, and the cheapest muscle is human. Why, you might ask, did Rome punish so harshly? The answer sits at the crossing of fear and numbers. Slaves were everywhere, in kitchens, fields, mines, mills, ships and schools, carrying chairs, cleaning latrines, grinding pigments, shaving faces, pouring wine, counting money. In some places they were the majority. On great estates, dozens lived in the barracks. In a city neighborhood, you might pass more enslaved people than free ones in a single morning's walk. When a system depends on force to keep thousands in line, fear must be visible. Punishment in Rome was not just revenge, it was policy. It was a theater. It was a message in iron and blood that reached farther than any voice. The tools were simple: a rope, a stick, a whip made of straps of leather weighted with knots or bits of metal, a pair of shackles with a crossbar, a yoke, a wooden frame called the furca that could be locked across shoulders so that the punished person carried his own burden like a walking sign, a collar stamped with letters that told the world he had run before, a brand pressed hot to the skin, a chain riveted to an ankle, a pit with a barred window. On the worst days, a cross, a wild beast, a mine's black mouth. We listen to the sounds that gather when the system works as designed: the slap of a strap on skin, the creak of a yoke when a man tries to sleep sitting upright, the ring of a chain across stone, the low groan that escapes a throat when hands are tied to a post and the body learns new pain. Add to that the daily sounds that are not punishment but feel like it: the millstone grinding, the overseer's footsteps, the key turning, the lock falling into place, the bell that calls back to work after midday rest. All of this is meant to do something inside the mind. It is meant to make choices small. Before we step closer to the lash, we must see the ground of rules. A slave could be punished for theft, for breaking tools, for talking back, for working slowly, for hiding grain, for drinking wine without permission, for touching a master's property in the wrong way, for trying to run away, for helping someone else run away, for hurting a free person, for lying, for refusing a sexual order, for practically anything an owner chose to call an offense. In the city, law courts might intervene for great matters, especially when a slave was accused of aiding in a crime. But inside the household, the master's will was a court. There were limits, but they were thin and late. In some moments of Roman history, an owner could be prosecuted for killing a slave without cause, though cause was a wide word and easy to find. At times, laws tried to restrain the cruelest exposures to wild beasts. In a few rare cases, philosophers wrote that slaves were men and deserved basic kindness. Yet in practice the system stood. If mercy appeared, it was not a right, it was a gift. It could be withdrawn, and everyone knew it. Now let us enter a day when punishment is not just a threat, but a plan. A jar of olive oil goes missing from the storeroom. It is not much, a small jar, the kind that would slip under a cloak. The steward notices because he notices everything. He counts the amphorae. He marks the lid with bitumen in a way that shows if it has been opened. He sees a smear that should not be there. He looks at the doorpin and knows if it was lifted and set back. He is a man trained to track losses because his own skin is tied to the number. He calls the barracks together in the yard. The air is brighter now. The dogs are fully awake. A few free workers stand at the far wall, arms folded, curious. The steward holds up the small jar with his thumb and 2 fingers. He says a simple thing: "Return it." He waits. The faces are serious and still. No one moves. He says, "Then I will ask the gods for truth." This is a bitter joke. The gods, he will call, are the straps hung from a hook in the storehouse. He sends 2 men to bring a post into the yard. They dig its end into a hole and tamp the soil tight. He orders 3 others to clear a space and sweep dust until the ground is smooth. The master has not been summoned. He does not need to be. This is routine. This is the steward's right. Punishment at this level does not require the purple-edged cloak. He chooses the first man by work group, the mill team. The millman steps forward calmly. Maybe he is guilty, maybe he is not. In this system, that difference often does not matter. The point is not only to find the jar. The point is to build a fear that will hold for weeks. 2 other slaves tie his wrists to the post above his head. They do it gently. They have been in his place, and maybe again. The steward tests the knots with his finger. He gives a nod. He begins with the flat strap, the one that burns skin but does not tear it open. He counts in a steady voice. The mill team watches without speaking. The dogs lie down and pant. This is flogging. It was the most common punishment in Rome, in homes, farms and prisons. It could be light or terrible. A cautious steward could stop when he saw the point had been made. A furious master could go on until flesh tore and fever followed, and a life failed 3 days later in the barracks, with no one writing the reason on a tablet. Writers in Rome spoke of flogging as ordinary. So ordinary that a person in fine clothes might pass a whipping in an alley the way we pass a parked cart, eyes barely turning. That is how fear is kept fresh, by making it part of the air. The steward stops at 10. He nods to the water boy to splash the man's shoulders. He looks at the faces. He chooses the water boy next. The boy flinches, then masters the flinch. He is tied. The strap rises and falls. Counting goes on. Somewhere a crow lands on the wall, head cocked. When it is over, there is still no jar. We step back to the larger map. Punishments change with the place. In the city, an enslaved tutor who contradicts a master at dinner may be flogged in the kitchen while guests laugh. An enslaved hairdresser may be forced to stand all day with her arms raised, holding combs until her shoulders burn. In the countryside, a vineyard hand may be shackled and sent to dig a new drainage ditch alone, with rations cut for a week. In both places, if a slave runs and is caught, he may be branded with letters on his forehead, F for fugitivus, or fitted with an iron collar whose inscription makes him a walking notice. I have run away, hold me, return me too, followed by the owner's name and address. Collars like these have been found by archaeologists. You can imagine the weight. You can feel the shame. Now and then, defiance explodes into open violence. When the great slave revolt broke out under Spartacus, it terrified the Republic for 2 years. The answer at the end was a road lined with crosses, thousands of men nailed up along the Appian Way as a lesson that reached every farm and kitchen in Italy. Crucifixion was not only for slaves, but it pressed hardest on them, because a slave could be crucified for crimes that would bring a fine to a free man. A cross does more than kill. It tells a story the living cannot forget. Some punishments were meant to disappear people rather than display them. Damnatio ad metalla, condemnation to the mines, was such a sentence. It was a way to make a person work in the dark until he no longer existed in the memory of the place he came from. Mines in Spain, in the Balkans, in the islands took bodies and gave back metal. The quarries did much the same, with stone instead of silver. In either case, the end was often the same. Lungs scoured by dust, backs broken by loads, nights spent chained in caves. When we say Rome, we must be honest about what built its baths and roads and temples. Marble does not cut itself. Silver does not rise from rock without hands. Back at the estate, the steward moves to the next step. He brings out the weighted whip, the one with knots or small pieces of metal stitched into the leather. This whip tears. It leaves marks that last. He does not use it on the first men. He chooses a new target, a quiet, narrow-shouldered scribe who keeps account for the steward and sleeps near the storeroom for easy access. The choice is deliberate. The message is, if the thief is among the field hands, he will see what happens to a man with privileges. If the thief is in the inner ring, he will feel the warning in his own bones. The scribe closes his eyes and opens them again. He does not plead. There is nothing to plead to. Before the lash falls, a small, tired voice speaks. A woman at the edge of the group lifts a small jar from under her tunic. She holds it with both hands like a baby's head. "Forgive me," she says. The steward turns. The master has come into the yard without anyone noticing. He has been watching from the shade. He steps forward now, hand on his belt, face unreadable. The woman says no more. She does not try to explain why she took the oil. Maybe she needed it for a baby's skin. Maybe she meant to sell it for a scrap of bread for an older parent. Maybe she is covering for someone else. Motive will not help her. In Rome, mercy is a decision, not a right. The master looks at the jar. He looks at the woman's face. He looks at the watching group. He thinks, if he is a thoughtful man, about three things at once: the order of his house, the eyes of his workers, and the balance of fear and productivity that keeps his estate profitable. He chooses a punishment that is old and simple, the furka. Two men bring the wooden yoke, a frame that rests on the shoulders and traps the arms, turning the body into a sign. They set it over her. They tie it fast. The weight presses down across bone and muscle. Then they lead her to the road that runs along the estate wall. She must walk it from one end to the other and back, in full view of passers-by, of free farmers, of overseers from neighbouring lands, of the peddler who sells combs and needles. The message is clear. Theft hurts the whole house. The house answers with shame. As she walks, people look and then look away. A few shake their heads. One laughs, nervous, too loud. A child points and is hushed. The strap marks on the men's backs sting in the sun. The scribe, still tied, watches the woman pass and then disappear behind the granary. The master turns to the steward. In a low voice, he says that the jar must be counted against her ration for the month. The steward nods and marks a line on his tablet. The master leaves the yard, cloak flicking dust. The morning's routine resumes. Vines must be tied, the mill must turn, the dogs lie down again. If this seems small compared to crosses and mines, remember that the great punishments hang over the daily ones like storms beyond the hills. Their shadow falls on every small choice. A slave who thinks of running remembers the branded F on another man's forehead. The iron collar's bite on a woman's neck. A story of a neighbour nailed to wood after striking his master. He remembers a distant cousin condemned to the mines and never heard from again. He looks at his ankle chain and thinks of the barred window of the ergastulum where he sleeps. He weighs risk against fear, and the fear wins, most days. This is how the system wants it. But a human heart is stubborn. It hides little fires. It keeps questions alive even when the mouth never speaks them. What keeps a person from becoming only what the system says he is? What keeps dignity from dying even when the body is whipped and made to carry a sign of shame? Part of the answer is memory. Of a mother's voice in another town, of a father who taught letters, of a prayer whispered in a language the master cannot understand. Part of the answer is small defiance. A handful of olives slipped into a friend's hand, an extra scoop of water poured for the old man who coughs at night, a broken tool repaired so well that the steward never knows it was cracked. These are not the grand acts that make histories. They are the daily ones that keep a person's sense of self from being crushed. There are also larger acts we will meet later. Planned flights using the rhythms of market days, alliances formed between kitchen and stable, silent networks that stretch from the city to the estates, moments when a house slave steals a key and passes it to a field hand in the dark, instances when a mistress's cruelty is checked by a neighbor who fears scandal more than justice. There are laws that try, clumsily, to soften a few edges. Philosophers who write, safely from their chairs, that a slave is also a man. And there are voices, quiet, almost never public, that whisper the forbidden thought. This is wrong. By noon, the woman has finished her walk. The yoke is lifted. Her shoulders are red and raw where the wood rubbed. She drinks water and sits with her back against the wall in the slim triangle of shadow. No one speaks to her in the open. Two girls, later, when the steward's eyes elsewhere, leave a crust of bread near her knees and walk away without looking back. The scribe is untied. He pulls his tunic over wounds that sting when cloth touches them. The millman returns to his circle, wood against shoulder, step after step, the stone grinding grain that will feed a house where he is not a guest. In the late afternoon, the master's friends arrive to see the new press. They walk in fine sandals. They praise the smoothness of the olive oil poured from a jug into their cups. They speak of politics in the city, of a candidate for office whose ring they have kissed, of the price of fish this summer and the rumor that a famous actor broke his ankle. One friend says, "Your steward is a good man, I can tell by the order here." The master smiles and says, "He is firm." They do not visit the ergastulum, they do not need to. They can hear the message in the silence of the yard. As evening comes, lamps are lit. The barracks door closes, the key turns. Bodies find their places on the floor. The chain links are straightened to avoid rubbing sores. Someone whispers a blessing in a language from far away. Someone else quietly hums the end of a song he is not allowed to sing aloud. The woman with the raw shoulders sleeps sitting up, because lying on her back burns, and lying on her side presses the bruise. The millman dreams of walking in circles because he has done it all day and the body does not know how to stop. And somewhere, in a city house, in a roadside inn, in a villa's cool atrium, a free person runs a finger around the rim of a cup and wonders, just for a moment, how many lashes stand behind the taste of this oil. He pushes the thought away. The world feels cleaner without it. But the thought returns at night, uninvited, like a stray dog scratching at a door. Rome is strong, Rome is rich, Rome is ordered. But under that order lies a question that no law can kill. What happens if fear stops working? Because fear does fail. It fails when a man decides that a brand is not worse than a lifetime in chains. It fails when a woman realizes that her back will be beaten whether she speaks or not, so she speaks. It fails when a steward who has used the strap for years looks at a child's face and cannot raise his hand again. It fails when enough small fires in enough hearts begin to glow at once. We will meet those fires. We will follow them into kitchens and vineyards, into city workshops and deep tunnels where ore is wrenched from rock. We will see the tools of punishment used and misused, and the minds that tried to justify them. We will look at the rare protections the law offered and the many cuts where it did not. We will walk beside people whose names are lost and feel what they felt, as closely as plain words can carry. Tonight, though, we leave the yard with one last image. A barred window, low to the ground, giving onto a corridor where a lamp burns and then gutters. Behind the bars, eyes look out, awake in the dark. They are not counting lashes or jars or olives. They are counting time. Not the time until dawn, everyone knows that, but the time until something changes. What will change it? A mistake? A kindness? A spark? Or a blow so cruel that it breaks not a back, but the spell of fear itself? That is the question the system fears most, and it is the question that carries us forward. Morning returns as if nothing happened. Dew clings to vine leaves, a cart rattles past with clay jars stacked like eggs. The steward checks the press, rubs a stain from its plank and nods once. Men bend to their rows, women move between olive trees with baskets tight to their hips. The mill turns and turns. Work is a blanket pulled over the yard, smoothing yesterday's roughness so it looks flat again. But underneath, nerves twitch. Shoulders remember wood, backs remember straps. Eyes learn to look ahead and not sideways. Rome kept order with more than whips and chains. It had a grammar of fear, a set of rules that told people how pain would be spoken and heard. Everyone on this estate, master, steward, field hand, kitchen girl, scribe, knows that grammar without ever reading it in a book. It lives in their bones. Rule 1. Punishment should be seen. The lash works, the yoke works, not only because of the sting and the weight, but because others watch. An invisible pain is a wasted lesson. Rule 2. Punishment should be certain enough to feel near. It does not need to fall every day. It only needs to seem close. A strap hanging in the storehouse doorway is a word. A collar on one neck speaks to 100. Rule 3. Punishment should be uneven. Mercy must look like a gift and not a right. If the same offense brings the same price every time, a person begins to count. Counting can lead to planning. The system prefers guessing. The steward keeps these rules like prayers. He is calm this morning, which is its own kind of warning. Calm tells the yard. Yesterday was not anger, yesterday was policy. He points with his tablet stylus, sets teams and sends them out. The woman who wore the yoke walks stiffly, carrying a small rake toward the herb plots near the kitchen. She does not speak. The scribe's tunic pulls at scabbed lines on his back. He carries a wax tablet and reed pen, shadowing the steward like a thin echo. At midday, when the sun stands high and even the dogs lie panting in shade, a roomer arrives with the peddler. He sells needles and combs and a string of glass beads the color of river water. He also sells talk. Always the freshest thing in his basket. He leans his elbows on the wall and says, low and eager, "In the city, they killed them all." The steward looks up, but not surprised. He has lived long enough to hear such stories come around like seasons. "Who?" asks a free farmhand, wiping his neck with a cloth. "The household of Pedanius Secundus," the peddler says, savouring the name as if it were spice. "A big man, a city prefect, they say. One of his slaves cut his throat, so the Senate ordered the rest. Everyone who slept under his roof put to death. 400, maybe more. The crowd howled, but the guards kept order. They say the law is old. If a master dies by a slave's hand, all the house must pay." The herb girl drops her rake. It clatters. The steward barely moves his eyes. He says one word, "Work," and the tools lift again. But the rumour has already done its work. It is a nail hammered into a beam, strong, visible, meant to hold weight. This story is true in its bones, if not in every counted hair. Such a mass killing did happen in the city decades ago. It stands in many minds like a black pillar. Rome is not shy about using a whole house to teach one lesson. No slave may dream of killing a master and leaving others safe. Punishment here is not about guilt, it is about position. A slave is below, a master is above. The ladder must not wobble. The law will kill 100 to nail down its rungs. The rumour hangs over the afternoon like heat. Even the steward feels it, though he would not say so. He knows what the law does when fear is needed in a hurry. He knows what the crowd does when it is split between pity and order. He has seen people cry, "Spare them," and then step back so the soldiers can pass. He has learned a quiet truth. Rome's harshness lives not only in the hands that hold whips, but in the eyes that look away. We return to the estate. The press gurgles a thin run of oil. The mill team changes shoulders. The water boy counts his trips and rubs a raw spot on his palm with spit. The scribe marks rations and tools with slow care, numbers marching like ants on the wax. Near the ergastulum door, a man sits with an iron ring on his ankle. He is older than most, but hard, like a root that has learned to live in stone. His name on the estate is Felix, because a master once said it as a joke. Lucky, the day the man survived a fever. He simply kept the name because it costs less to bend to a word than to fight it. The collar at Felix's neck is gone now, cut off years ago, but the skin carries a pale band where iron rubbed his sweat into a permanent mark. He tells the water boy quietly how the iron collars worked in his time. They were not all thick as door hinges, he says. Some were thin, almost like a belt, but always with a plate and letters cut deep. I have run, catch me, return me to, and then the owner's name. We were made into our own notice boards. Even a friend who wished to help had to read and look away. Did you try to run? The boy asked. Felix stares at the barred window, at the bit of sky that shows like a broken plate. Twice, he says. The first time, I thought I could outrun the dogs. The second, I thought I could outlast the dogs. I learned what I needed to learn. The boy waits. Felix does not say what he learned, maybe only that the dogs do not get tired when they run for meat. Maybe that the countryside holds too many eyes and too few doors. Maybe that fear is a track you carry with you. He only touches the pale band at his neck with a finger and then scratches like a habit that never left. Across the yard, the house slaves move faster. A guest has come. One of the master's friends who likes to tell stories at dinner and be admired for them. He has a booming laugh and soft hands. In the kitchen, a young woman lifts a pot with cloth wrapped around her palms and breathes through her mouth so the steam will not sting her eyes. The villika checks bread and herbs and wine and tells the kitchen girls to keep the floor clean because this guest likes to walk in and praise rustic simplicity, which is never simple, never rustic, and never his. In the city, men like this guest speak about philosophy and kindness over plates of fish and bowls of olives. Some write letters saying that a master should be gentle because anger is a weakness and cruelty ruins fine households. This is not nothing. A letter can sometimes soften a hand, but a letter cannot erase a law. And no letter keeps a body from being strapped to a post when a steward needs to make a point. Even the kindest house still has a locked door for the night. After the meal, the guest strolls the yard in his clean sandals, the edge of his cloak bright. He stops by the ergastulum steps and peers in, as if into a stable, then lifts his chin to smell the evening air instead. You run this place well, he says to the master. I can tell by the quiet. Quiet, here, is not peace. It is pressure. It is the pause before a person speaks the wrong word and pays for it. It is the stillness of people who have learned that every movement can be read as meaning. A slow turn of a head can be defiance. A quick glance can be fear. The steward reads these signs all day, and the yard knows he reads them. When the guest has gone, and the lamps are lit along the walkway, the master calls the steward and scribe to the atrium. A lamp burns on a bronze stand. The ceiling is painted with small stars. The master sits where a small stream of cool water runs through a shallow channel, part of the house's polite show of nature inside. He speaks in a level voice. The oil, he says. I want locks changed, and I want the late watch doubled for a month. The steward nods, already thinking where to steal sleep to cover the extra hours. The scribe writes a neat line on wax. Change bolts, double watch. His back stings as he bends. The master looks at him. He is not cruel in his look. He is barely curious. To him, the scribe's wounds are like a scratch on a tool, something that does not change function. The peddler told a story, the master says after a moment, about the city. You heard it? Yes, the steward says. Good, the master says. Let it be heard. It is a simple order. Let fear circulate. Rome's harsh stories are a currency like coin. They buy quiet. That night in the barracks, men and women lie close, wood beams above like ribs. A boy studies the hole in the wall where a rat used to come and go until someone blocked it with packed mud. The woman who wore the yoke sleeps on her side, a cloth folded under her shoulder. A man breathes in small gasps. the sound of ribs healing from a fall with a load. The older man, Felix, stares at the door. He is not counting time now, he is counting chances, small as seeds. Once in a while, a bigger chance comes. Market days bring crowds to the road, festival days bring wine and masks and busy watchmen. The calendar itself can be an ally. Saturnalia will come in winter, a short season when masters and slaves share tables, trade hats for an hour, play at reversed roles. It is a game, a thin sugar glaze poured over a hard cake. But games can slip, and in the slip, doors sometimes open. The estate has seen it before, a man who used the noise of a winter night to get beyond the last wall, a kitchen girl who pressed a key into a friend's palm while people sang. These stories lift like heath in the yard when winter nears. Then they settle again when someone is caught and brought back with an iron ring bright at his ankle. There are other openings too, on darker edges of the map. Mines swallow people, quarries eat backs and lungs. But sometimes a condemned man is sold instead, into a workshop or to a boat, if a buyer can be found with the right coin and whisper. A man who knows the city alleys can sometimes outwalk a pursuer who only knows fields. A woman taken to a bathhouse to scrub floors may hear a name from home and pass a message that becomes a rope made of words. Rome is a net, but there are knots where fingers can grip. The steward does not sleep much. He walks the yard twice after midnight, his feet remembering where stones lie in the dark. He stops by the barred window of the ergastulum and listens. A voice murmurs in the far corner. A prayer, maybe. Another voice soothes a child who woke from a bad dream and cannot name it because it has no clear face, only weight. The steward thinks of the city story again. He tells himself it is good that such news travels, good for order. Still, something in him shifts. He pictures 400 people walked to death because one hand held a knife. He rubs his forearm as if his skin itches. He is not a soft man. He is not a brave man. He is a tired man who knows that everything he does sits on top of that old rule. The life of the slave is the master's to spend. At daybreak, a messenger comes from a neighboring estate. He rides a small, strong horse and wears the brown cloak of a steward's man. He speaks on the wall walk, where free hands cannot hear, but sounds carry and slaves have long ears. The word is simple and heavy. A runaway from the neighbor's place was taken at the river crossing last night. He had a knife. He did not let it fall. A guard is hurt. The neighbor wants a show. He will crucify the runaway at the crossroads where the olive road meets the market road. He invites nearby estates for the lesson. Everyone knows what a crossroads cross is for. It is not for speed, it is for sight. A body lifted high is a sign people read as they pass with baskets and jars. Rome learned this from older powers and made it bigger. Not every runaway dies this way, not most, but the threat hangs like a constant sky. That is how one death is made to govern 1,000 steps. The master does not question the plan. He says to the steward, "Go, take enough hands to show respect. Take the scribe, let him see and remember as number and example." The scribe bows his head to hide the flinch his body cannot fully hide. The group walks out at mid-morning, past wheat that bows in the light wind, past a willow that leans over the stream like an old man. The road dust lifts in soft clouds under their feet. They join others at the crossing, stewards from 3 houses, free tenants, a few townsmen with baskets, boys who run ahead and then run back with eyes too large. Soldiers stand in a loose square. A carpenter has set up the posts and crosspiece. The wood is rough, still smelling of sap. A bucket sits nearby, water for the workers, not for the condemned. The runaway is there guarded. He is not from this estate. That makes it easier and also more eerie. He could be any of them, which is the point. He is a compact man, with the look of someone who has spent years lifting exactly the same weight, exactly the same way, a quarryman perhaps. His hands are big, his face is calm in a way that is not surrender. He stands barefoot. The ring on his ankle shines like a new coin, as if someone polished it for the show. There are many ways to die on Rome's wood. Sometimes nails, sometimes rope, sometimes both. Today, the neighbour has chosen nails, because they make a cleaner shape and a sharper lesson. A carpenter takes the quarryman's arm. The quarryman does not pull back. He looks up past the men's heads to a small hawk circling, not even curious. The hawk's world is hunger and wind, free of laws and tablets. Someone near the master mutters, "It would have been kinder to send him to the mines." This is not a kind thought. It is a calculation. Mines kill slowly with work and dark. The cross kills slowly with air and thirst. Rome knows both kinds of slowness. Which one is chosen depends on what story the master wants told. The scribe's mouth goes dry. He thinks of words he learned once in a house where letters were gifts. Dignity, fate, mercy. They feel thin now, like pieces of reed. He has written numbers for years, jars, rations, blades, days. He knows how to make tallies clean. He does not know how to fit a human body onto a counting line. The hammer lifts, it falls. It is not the loudness that hurts the onlookers, it is the steadiness. Strike, set, the way one builds a fence. A woman near the market road presses a cloth to her face. A boy watches from beneath the cart. The guard whose leg is bandaged stands stiffly, jaw tight, as if to say, "This is culture. This is order. This is what law looks like when it does not wear a toga." A man in a plain cloak steps up with a writing board. He hangs a small tablet round the condemned man's neck, a notice of the crime. People will pass and read, if they can read, and for those who cannot, someone will speak the words aloud. Runaway slave, armed, wounded a guard. The short line does not carry the whole story, because the whole story never fits on wood. No notice holds the years before, the heavy stone, the narrow bed, the night air that smelled like freedom once and like wet rope after. The crosspiece is raised. The post receives it with a deep wood groan that lives in some ears for years. The body hangs. Nails do not kill quickly, they hold. Rope does not kill quickly, it holds. The slow weight of the chest must work all day for breath. The throat dries. Flies come. The sun tells time the way it did yesterday, when the woman walked under the yoke. But today the clock is crueler. The master nods once to the neighbour. The neighbour returns the nod. Two men admitting they live in the same world and will keep it the same. The crowd thins. Work calls. Fear has learned what it came to learn, or so the system believes. The steward turns back to the estate with his group. The scribe walks as if his sandals are heavy. Felix has not come. He was not chosen. But he hears about the crossroads before the steward's cloak crosses the yard. Word runs faster than feet. In the quiet that follows such shows, two kinds of thoughts grow. One is the thought the masters want, I must not step out of line. The other is the thought they dread. If a man must die slowly either way, then perhaps the choice is not between living and dying, but between how I will be remembered in my own head. That second thought does not always lead to knives or crosses. Sometimes it leads to something smaller, but just as dangerous to order, a plan. That evening, in the low light near the storage shed, three people bend their heads close, as if studying a knot in the door plank. The scribe, the woman who wore the yoke, Felix. They speak plainly, like people who cannot afford pretty words. "The key," the woman says. "You copy it?" The scribe nods. He is thin, but his hands are steady. I pressed it in wax when I was told to count the locks, he says. I carve by lamplight, olive wood. It will hold once, maybe twice. Felix looks toward the barracks door. Twice is a fortune, he says. Pay me? The scribe asks, voice barely sound. Why now? Felix does not look at him. Because this morning they nailed a man to wood to teach us to be quiet, and all day all I could hear was a hawk that did not care. I want one thing in this life that belongs to me. And what is that? The woman asks. A choice, Felix says. The plan is not a grand revolt. It is not Spartacus and banners and the Appian Way lined with bodies. It is a small thing with big risk. A door, a path, a stream, a grove, a ride hidden under a cart, a city alley where a cousin may still live behind a bakery, a name remembered that can lead to a safe corner. It is thread, not rope, but thread can pull a seam open. The scribe spreads his palm. An olive wood key lies there, pale and smooth, the teeth sharp and hopeful. It looks harmless. So many harmful things look harmless before they turn. In the yard, the steward moves like a dark comma, pausing, correcting, continuing. He sees the three heads bent together and sees only three bodies near a door because he has looked at so many doors today and so many bodies. He walks on. He is not a fool. He is not a monster. He is a man swimming in the grammar of fear and trying not to drown. He does not yet know that one word has just changed in a sentence he thought he knew by heart. Night will come, keys will turn, breath will slow, a pale shape, the olive wood key, will find metal in the dark. The choice will sit like a live coal in three throats, and at the crossroads, under a sky now cold, a hawk will ride, a last line of air, and go to ground. The post will stand, the body will hang, and in its shadow other bodies will decide what to do with their next hour. What happens when one small key meets one old lock in a world built to keep every door shut? Dusk slips over the estate like a blanket laid by an old hand. The olive leaves turn from bright to dull. The vine rows lose their sharp edges. Lamps blink on in the house, then in the kitchen, then at the ergastulum door. A bell rings once, for evening ration. Bowls scrape, water spills. Someone laughs too loud and then covers it with a cough. The dogs patrol their chains, noses up, reading the air. The steward walks his last round with the scribe behind him, marking small things the way some men count beads. A gate latch too loose, a hinge that squeals, a water jar chipped at the lip. He is calm and tired. He does not know that a new word has been written into the grammar of his yard. He will feel it soon. In the barracks, bodies settle in their familiar places. Iron rings are turned to lie flat so they will rub less in the night. A man pulls a small splinter from his heel with his teeth and spits it away. The woman who wore the yoke places a folded cloth under her shoulder. She breathes low to test the sting and then holds it there. A boy curls close to the wall, where the stones hold the day's heat a little longer. Felix sits near the door, back to the timber, eyes open. The pale scar where a collar once pressed shines faintly in the lamplight. The new ring at his ankle is no scar. It is iron, tight and real. A short chain runs from ring to a staple set in the floor beam. The chain is long enough to let him stand and lie and take a few steps. It is not long enough to reach the door. The scribe sits beside him, cross-legged. He smells of lamp smoke and wax, and the bitter oil that keeps reed pens supple. The woman crouches close, head bowed. In her palm, cupped like a bird, lies the olive wood key. It is small and pale and looks like nothing. That is its first strength. Third watch, the scribe whispers. The dogs sleep hardest then. The boys on wall duty trade places. The kitchen fire is down, but not out. He, and he means the steward, walks once more and then sits. He dozes, he always dozes just before dawn. How do you know? The woman asks. I count, the scribe says. It is what I do. I count jars, knives, steps, habits. Felix nods. Third watch, he says softly, as if tasting the words for weight. There is still the chain. The scribe draws from his sleeve a narrow strip of leather and a small wedge of wood. Pad and wedge, he says. If we cannot free it, we can quiet it. Wrap the ring. Force the wedge between links so they cannot rattle. The woman opens the small cloth bundle at her hip. Inside there is a heel of bread, a piece of salted fish, a twist of dried figs, and a scrap of cloth soaked with oil. For your feet, she says, and for your scent. She looks at him with a steady face. Dogs read men like tablets. Oil can blur a line. Felix looks at the food and then at the woman's shoulder, still raw from the furka. You should come, he says. She shakes her head once. I cannot run far with this shoulder, she says. I will slow you and betray you. And if they search, they will not search a woman first for a key shape. They will search the men. She closes the cloth again and ties it with a knot that can be pulled with one tug, the kind of knot a woman who works fast learns to make. He looks at the scribe. The scribe's back still carries scabbed stripes under his tunic. You should come, Felix says. The scribe touches the wax tablet in his lap, the one he always carries. Not tonight, he says. His voice is steady, but something in his eyes is not. We need someone who knows the inside of the locks to stay inside a little longer. 2 doors, 3 keys, 4 habits, I can count them still, and pass what I know. If we all go, we carry all we know away and leave nothing but fear behind. He swallows. If you reach the town, there is a bakery near the cattle market. The owner's wife is from Umbria. Her brother was sold here once. Ask for bread that tastes like rains. She will hear the word. If she has any good left, she will hide you. If she has none, she will sell you. It is a coin toss. Felix turns the key in the woman's palm with one finger to feel the cut of the teeth. Twice, you said. It may hold twice, the scribe says. Olive is soft, iron is not. Do not waste tries. The woman looks at Felix, long as a prayer. If you get out, she says, do not look back at the wall. It is a trick. The wall pulls the eyes and steals the feet. Look at the next thing, a tree, a cartwheel, a shadow. Walk to that. Then the next. Felix nods again. He is not a man to waste words. He has lived too long under people who spend them like water. They wait. Night divides itself into pieces, the Romans' 4 watches. First, when lamps still burn bright. Second, when dogs are most wakeful. Third, when tiredness wins. Fourth, when cold creeps and cocks announce it. The first watch passes with whispers and the scratch of rats in the walls. The second passes with a soft shuffle of sandals on the wall walk, and a dog's low question answered by another dog's huff. Then by quiet. In the third, breaths deepen and even the iron seems to rest. The woman moves first. She coughs lightly and shifts a sleeping body a hand's breadth to make a space near the chain staple. The scribe slides like a shadow to the floor beam. Felix rolls onto his side, slow as if scratching an itch, and draws his ankle closer. The chain lifts a finger's width and then settles again without a sound. The scribe wraps the leather around the ring, pulling it tight. He wedges the small wood between 2 links until they lock against each other, short and stiff as if they were one piece. The iron sighs, a tiny sigh. The woman presses the oilcloth around the ring and the leather, rubbing oil into the crevices the way a mother rubs balm into a child's cracked heel. She seals the leather knot with a twist and a prayer that has no God's name and so offends none. Felix stands. The chain holds him to the beam, but it does not clink. He takes 3 steps. He stops at the edge of the barracks door, where a curse has been carved by someone long ago and then scraped away, leaving a ghost of letters that the lamplight can only guess at. The door lock is a simple warded type. An iron tongue slides into a slot. A key with the right teeth turns a bit and lifts the tongue. The steward turns it each night with the same lazy twist, thinking of barley tallies and bed and tomorrow's walk. The scribe has watched his hand for years. He made the olive wood key teeth to match that curl. Felix kneels and eases the key into the keyhole. Wood kisses iron with a small dry sound. He breathes out slow to keep his heart from banging so hard it will knock the door itself. He turns. The teeth catch. They shift. For a blink, nothing moves, and the world narrows to the shape of a sliver in a hole. Then, soft, soft, the iron tongue lifts. The bar gives. The heavy door pulls in a finger's width. He stops. He closes his eyes. He feels the old feeling that came the first time he ran, the bright cold of space beyond the door, the rush like falling, the body lighter than thought. He opens his eyes. The woman is watching him, steady. The scribe is watching too, and his eyes are a well full of words, and none of them help. Felix looks at the chain staple. It is iron sunk into wood, peened over when the wood was green, so the iron grips now that the wood is old. There is no removing it without a hammer and noise. The chain is short, but quiet now. He can go 10 steps out and then bend to pass under the lower part of the doorframe, where a floor beam has sagged. "Do not rush," the scribe whispers. "Do not speak. If you need to stop, stop with your foot already rising." A stopped foot looks like a stone. A moving one looks like a man. Felix nods. He slides through the gap like a leaf on water. The door breathes shut behind him, not quite closed, just a whisper from the jamb. He feels the night air on his face like a hand from another life. Outside, the yard is a map he knows in his body. 5 paces to the press, 3 to the pillar where tools lean, 7 to the kitchen corner where refuse is piled, 9 to the wall where a low drain hole is cut for storm water. The dogs shift in their sleep. One sighs, a soft whine threaded through it. The stars overhead are hard and small. A bat writes a crooked line between the lamps. Felix goes to the shed first. The olive wood key turns again. The gods of wood and patience travel with it. Inside the shed, the air smells of rope, straw and iron. He moves by memory, not sight. 3rd shelf, left side, a small file used for smoothing yoke ends, a coil of thin cord, a gourd with a stopper, a wrapped roll of spare sandals for free workers, rough but whole, a broken knife with a narrow, still sharp point. He slides the file beneath his belt. He ties the cord around his waist. He knots the spare sandals to the cord's left side so they will not slap when he runs. He tucks the knife in the back of his tunic. He lifts the gourd and shakes it. It sloshes. He cracks the stopper and smells sour. Vinegar. Good for thirst and for washing smells. He takes it. He closes the shed door and breathes again. Every sound is a mountain. He hears the wall walker cough and spit over the far side. He hears a night bird say something rude and small to another bird. He hears his own blood say, "Hurry, hurry, hurry," and he says back to it, "No." He pads to the drain hole. It is low and dark, a square cut through the base of the wall to let storm water escape. In dry months, rats use it to come into grain stores. It is too small for a man. It is the wrong door. He knew that, but he checks anyway, because checking saves men more than boldness ever did. He goes next to the pig yard gate. Pigs root in dreams and fart softly. The gate latch is a simple peg and leather loop. He lifts the peg, slips through, lowers it again. He crosses the peg yard on the beam that keeps feet from sinking into mud when it rains. The far fence is made of woven brushwood and a beam pegged to 2 posts. On the left post there is a place where the pegged beam has been cut and mended. The cut no longer fits tight. A quiet hand can lift it with a slow pry. Felix sets the knife point under the beam and levers, slow, slow. The peg lifts. The beam tips. He slides his body under, flat, iron ring and padded chains scraping dirt but not singing, and he is out in the narrow strip between the pig yard and the outer wall, where nettles grow tall in summer and the steward forgets to cut them because he never walks here. He crouches, he waits, he listens. The wall walker's sandals scrape above and then pass on. A dog down the lane barks at something that is not him. A frog plucks a string in the ditch like a drunk musician. The world is wide and noisy and does not care about one man under a wall. That, tonight, is the world's kindness. He follows the wall in the shadow of its own bulk to the place where a fig tree leans over it. The tree is old and has sent a root under the wall stones and cracked the mortar. Someone told the steward this once. The steward said, "We will mend it after harvest," and then did not. Trees do not fear calendar. Felix tests the crack. It is not a door, but it is a promise. He smiles, just a thin line that feels strange on his face after so many blank days. He moves on to the back gate. The back gate is for carts and deliveries. It has a bar across it inside and a lock that takes a stout iron key from outside. The steward locks it at dusk. The guards lean on it at midnight and speak low about dice and girls and who cheats at both. Tonight there is one guard, not two. The neighbour's crucifixion drew men away to talk and linger. One man stayed because one man was ordered to stay. Felix lies flat in the shadow beside the gate and listens to the guard's feet. The man shifts. He hums. He farts. He scrapes a pebble out from under his sandal. He is not thinking about thieves. He is thinking about the city story and whether such a law would ever touch a small man like him. He is wondering if the javelin he keeps by the gate would make him look brave if ever he had to lift it. Felix breathes slow. He slides the knife point under the gate bar. The bar is a thick plank with iron bands at the ends. It sits in sockets. It will not lift quietly. He does not try. He reaches instead with the knife point for the rope that ties the bar to a small peg, the fail-safe that keeps a bar from bouncing if a cart bumps the gate from the outside. He saw the rope yesterday when the scribe showed him where to look. He saw how frayed it was. He saw how a little cut would become a fray, and a night's damp would make a fray into a weakness. The knife whispers along fibre. The fibre parts like hair pulled through a fine comb. The bar is now a promise too, but the gate still will not open without the outside key. That is not a promise, it is a wall. Felix slides away and lies flat again and waits for the world to tell him the next thing. Sometimes the next thing is not a gap in wood, sometimes it is feet. They come soft, a scuffle of sandals, a catch and breath, not from the wall but from the lane beyond. A cart creaks, an ox snorts, a man whispers, "Up you old king." The guard at the gate straightens. "Who goes?" he calls, voice trying to be large. "Wine," says the whisperer. "2 jars for the house. The master's friend sent a gift." The guard grunts. "Late. Only time the ox would move," the man says. "If I lose light, I lose the road, open, and I will be quick." Felix feels his own breath pause. He hears the key scrape in the outer lock. He hears the iron tongue pull. He feels the bar sag and then catch because the rope is cut. He hears the guard curse softly and lift the bar himself. He hears the gate hinge complain like an old woman and then clear its throat. The cart's wheel turns. The ox blows snot. The guard steps back to the side so he will not be run over. In that step a slice of shadow appears between cart and gatepost, thin as a hand and just as powerful. Felix moves. He slides like water along the post. Under the ox's patient eye, past the guard's shoulder. The guard smells of onion and cheap wine and a life that will go on tomorrow as if nothing passed him tonight. Felix is outside. He does not look back at the wall. He looks for the next thing, a low pile of stones beside the lane where a mason left them to mend a culvert. He walks to it, he becomes it, a shape that a sleepy man will not count. When the cart moves, he moves with it, his body a shadow at its shadow's edge. The lane bends between hedges, a frog splashes, a field opens to the left, where stubble shows pale in starlight. To the right, the ditch runs dark. Far off, a town's low glow softens the sky, not light enough to read by, but enough to tell a direction. East. The cattle market will be this side. So will the bakery. Bread that tastes like rain, he says in his head to make sure he will remember when his mouth is dry and his fear is loud. Behind him, inside the wall, the scribe breathes again only when the guard's key turns and the bar thumps back. He closes the barracks door the last finger's width and slides the olive wood key from the hole, so slow it could be a leaf falling. He holds it in his fist and feels it pulse like a live thing. The woman sets her head on her folded arm and pretends to sleep, so if the steward walks in, he will see only a tired back and not a storm's wave beneath it. The steward does not walk in. Not yet. He sits on his stool in his small room, listening to the yard with ears trained by years. He hears the cart, he hears the hinge, he hears the bar. He frowns because the bar made a sound it does not usually make, a small bounce and catch. He rubs his face. He stands. He takes his lamp and goes out. On the lane, Felix keeps to the ditch side. He counts paces in quiet groups of 5, because 5 is a small number that can be swallowed quickly when a shout comes. He passes a milestone set in the ditch bank. The Roman numbers cut into its face say how far to the great road. He cannot read them in the dark, but he touches the stone as he passes, and it feels like a friend in a crowd who squeezes your hand just once. The cart turns into another track and leaves him. The ox's bell fades, the night opens wider. In the field to the left, a hare moves like a thrown handful of shadow and is gone. An owl crosses the lane, soundless as breath. Somewhere beyond the next bend, a dog begins to bark and then stops, bored by its own story. Felix crouches and pulls the sandals from his waistcord. He changes the sandals fast, wraps the old ones in the oilcloth and pushes them into the hedge where nettles will hold their smell. He rubs his ankles with the oily cloth. He rubs the leather-wrapped ring and chain and presses the wedge deeper until the links hold like teeth clenched by a stubborn jaw. At the first field gate, he leaves the lane and walks inside the field, along the furrow lines, so his shape will be a row to any eyes from the road. He walks from shadow to shadow, the shadow of a tree, the shadow of a hayrick, the shadow of a low wall where wild thyme grows between stones and gives the air a small, sweet thought. He reaches a stream. He crouches and cups water and drinks. He pours vinegar from the gourd and swallows. It bites and wakes him. He rinses the oil from his hands, so his hands will smell like water and field, not like a kitchen. He wets his hair and slicks it back. So if anyone sees him, he will look like a labourer who has been sweating at night work, not like a man who has just fallen out of a cage. At the stream's bend, there is a small plank bridge. He crouches beneath it and counts until his breath slows. He says the words again, bread that tastes like rain. He sees in his head the woman's face and the scribe's long fingers holding the key. He sees a hawk at a crossroads. He sees a tree root breaking mortar. At the estate, the steward reaches the back gate and touches the bar. He frowns. He lifts it. The cut rope falls in his hand like a dead snake. He looks at the lock and the iron tongue. He looks at the lane. He looks at the sky. He is a man who knows the shape of trouble before it speaks. He walks the wall. He finds the pig-yard beam set crooked. He finds the nettles bent. He kneels and touches the soil. The smudge his finger lifts smells of oil and earth. He stands and does not shout. He does not run. He turns slow and walks to the house. He wakes the master with a quiet knock. The master blinks and sits up and takes his cloak around his shoulders, because men always feel more like masters when their shoulders are covered. "What is it?" he asks. "Nothing you can lift," the steward says, very calm. "A man is gone." "Who?" "Felix." The master thinks of a pale scar on a neck and a pair of hands that never broke a tool. He thinks of how much it costs to replace a trained pair of hands. He thinks of the neighbour's cross and a hawk. "When?" he asks. "Now," the steward says. "Between second and third watch. Raise the men," the master says. "Take the dogs. Go to the river crossing and the willows and the cattle road. Tell the guard captain at the town that I will pay for a rope on the gate. Tell him my loss is his theft if he lets him pass." The steward nods, but he does not turn at once. "Shall we beat the yard?" he asks, not because he needs orders, but because he wants the master's voice to carry the blame. "Beat them," the master says. "Beat them all, not to ruin, to remember." The steward bows. He leaves. He is tired to the bone. He is not cruel by taste tonight. He is cruel by habit. Habit swings more arms than anger. He goes to the yard. He calls men. He calls dogs. He calls boys and gives them torches. He sends them to lanes and fields. He points to the ergastulum, and house slaves run to bring the strap and the post. The yard wakes like a hive struck with a stick. In the barracks, the woman has the key in her palm again. She passes it to the scribe. "Twice," she whispers. "Twice, you said. Keep it dry." He nods. He hides it in the hem of his tunic, stitched already with a small pocket he had sewed last week, while the villager thought he was mending a towel. He presses the seam with his thumb until it lies flat and looks like nothing. That is the second strength of small things. On the road, Felix hears a dog bark behind, and another answer left and another answer right. He tastes iron in his mouth. He does not run. He walks faster. He keeps to shadows. He remembers the woman's rule: do not look at the wall, look at the next thing. The next thing is a line of poplars that marks the cattle road. He moves toward that line, and when he reaches it, he becomes one line among many. At the cattle road, he drops into the ditch. He crawls under the hedge and comes up in another field. He crosses it. He finds a low hedge gap and slides through. He finds a small cart track and kneels and presses his palm to the tree. The dust is soft, no fresh wheel mark. Good. He moves again. Behind him, torches bounce. Small suns in a black bowl. Voices call, some rough with drink, some sharp with duty. "There?" says a boy, always a boy first, because boys' eyes are greedy for a shout. But the "there" is a hare. The men curse the boy and laugh, and then stop laughing because the steward is near. The steward says nothing. He is counting in his head steps, hedges, culverts, choices. He has hunted men before in this country. He will find sign and follow it to the place where fear does or does not break a man. At the town's edge, the gate is a dark shape with a darker slit. The night guard snores in a chair with his head against the wall. A rope hangs from a peg beside him, the rope that drops the bar behind the gate in an alarm. The rope's end is tied with a knot anyone can pull. The steward's message about the rope has not arrived. Messages do not run faster than men. They only look like they do to masters who sit and order them. Felix does not go to the gate. He turns left where the old ditch runs along the outside and follows it to a low place where stones are missing. He slides down, crosses and climbs the far side. He walks beside the wall until the cattle postern shows as a black mouth. It is barred from the inside at night. He does not need it. He needs the smell. He stands there and lets the air tell him which way the cattle market lies. The air says dung and straw and old milk to the right. He nods to the air like a friend and goes right. He finds the cattle square by sound, a chain clink as the sleeper rolls, a cow sighs, a man in a cloak coughs and swears and settles again. He keeps to the edge, stalls and pens make a low maze. He moves through it, reading shadows like words. He finds the lane with the baker's signs, a carved bread, a sheaf of grain, a goddess with a small loaf in her hand. At the third doorway, set back a little from the lane, there is a small scraped mark at eye level, like a child's fingernail line. The scribe told him to look for that. He touches it. It is old. It is still true. He knocks 3 soft knocks and 1 soft, then waits. He hears a small movement inside, then nothing. Then the tiny click of a latch string drawn with care. The door opens a finger's width. A woman peers out. Her hair is tied back under a cloth. Flour dust clings to her wrists. Her eyes are tired and sharp. "Market is tomorrow," she says, as if to a late buyer. "I want bread," Felix says, voice even. "Reed that tastes like rain." She does not move for a long breath. Then she opens the door just wide enough to admit him and closes it just as quick. The room is dark and warm, with the deep, good smell of dough and ash and a life that rises in the night while other lives sleep. She looks at him, at his hands, at his ankle, at the leather-wrapped iron. "You have brought trouble," she says. "I have brought a man," he says. "Only one." She tilts her head like a bird on a branch. "One becomes 10 in a week if a house is careless," she says. "I have a child. I have a husband with a temper. I have a brother who was sold." "I know," Felix says. "That is why I came." She looks at him a moment more. Then she moves to the oven and lifts a loaf with a cloth and cracks it in half. Steam ghosts out. She hands him 1 half and sets the other on the table. "Eat," she says. "Then hide. We will see if morning brings wolves." Back on the estate lane, the steward stands at the stream where the plank bridge crosses. He holds a torch low and peers at the mud. There is the shallow print of a sandal and the smaller smear where a foot slid and caught. There is the little crescent where a chain ring edge pressed and then was lifted. He grunts once, not triumph, not anger, just the sum adds as expected. He turns to the dog handler. "Town," he says. "Cattle Road. We go there. If he is clever, he will not use the gate. If he is tired, he will. If he is lucky, he is already inside, and the luck is the town's to lose." The handler nods. He looses the dogs and they snuffle and then wag and then stiffen and tug. They pull toward the cattle road. The steward follows, not fast, he is not a runner. He is a reader of signs, and signs do not change when a man hurries. In the barracks, the strap falls, not as rage but as reminder. The scribe takes his turn and counts each stripe inside his head, not to cry out, but to make each one a number he can bear. The woman takes her turn and bites her lip so the sound that escapes is a breath, not a word. The others take theirs. They will all show the same pattern in the morning. The yard will look neat to the master's eye. Neatness is a god in Rome. In the bakery, the woman lifts a floorboard and points with her chin. Felix slides under and lies in the warm dark with flour dust in his nose and the memory of vinegar in his throat and the taste of bread in his mouth. Above him, feet move. A child turns and mutters in sleep. A man coughs and goes quiet. The woman kneels and whispers through the crack. At dawn, watch the alley. If a man in a red cloak stands at the corner, do not move. If a boy with a broom walks past twice, go to the back door and follow him. If you hear the word rain sung, wait. Why help me? Felix asks, because a man must understand the ground he stands on. She is quiet for a long breath. Because my brother was a man, she says at last, and not a price. The floorboard lowers, the room's heat becomes a roof. The night breathes. On the wall walk, the steward leans on the parapet and looks at the road to town, a soft smear between trees. He thinks of letters he once heard a guest speak. Mercy, order, law. He thinks of the city's story and of men nailed to teach a city to be quiet. He thinks of the woman in his yard who wore the yoke and did not cry. He thinks of a thin scribe who copies keys in olive wood. He thinks of a man named Lucky who ran twice and learned what he needed and then ran a third time because a hawk taught him a lesson no lawgiver writes. He wonders, just for a flicker, whether this house is safer if Felix is caught and broken on wood, or if this house is safer if the story told here is different, that a man left, and dogs ran, and men ran, and the morning came and the house still stood. He rubs his face. He turns to go down and make the hard choice that men in his place call duty and men under his hand call pain. At the bakery, a mouse skitters along the wall. Felix hears it and does not flinch. He has learned not to flinch at small things. It is the big one that will ask the price. Dawn. What will the morning bring? The red cloak, the broom, or the song? Dawn lifts like a slow lid. The town yawns. Chickens call. A cartwheel bumps a stone and someone curses softly. Smoke slides out of chimneys in thin blue lines. The cattle square wakes with a shuffle and a low chorus. Metal rings, hooves stamping, men hawking phlegm, sleepy jokes. A baker's paddle knocks the oven lip. A second blows wood dust from his hands. A third carries warm loaves to a stall and tries not to eat one. Under a floorboard, Felix lies still and counts breaths. Flour dust tickles his nose. He sneezes once and bites it down to a tiny keh sound, more like a mouse than a man. Above him, the woman moves with a rhythm that tells time better than a clock. Scrape, lift, set, brush, turn. She does not speak to him yet. The house must sound like any other house. When the first buyers leave with bread tucked in cloth and the street begins to swell, the woman kneels and lifts the board a finger's width. Watch the alley, she whispers. Little window, left of the back door. If a boy with a broom walks past twice, go to the door, but do not open it until I pull the latch. Follow him. If you see a man in a red cloak at the corner, stay. That is a watchman. The word is rain. If you hear someone sing the word, wait. That is for danger. Felix nods. He cannot see her face. He can smell the heat of the oven and the clean sweat of morning work. He eats the last bite of last night's half loaf and licks his finger. He thinks of the woman's line, quick and hard as a thrown nail. My brother was a man, not a price. He puts the words in his chest like a coin he will not spend. On the estate, the yard is awake before dawn. Torches sputter down. Dogs pant, tongues like wet leather. The search group trickles back, dusty, empty-handed. Men shake heads. Boys lie fast and say they almost had him. The steward listens, says little, and begins the other work, a different kind of hunt. He orders the posts set. He lays out the strap. He calls the yard to stand in lines. He is calm. His voice is low. He does not shout because shouting wastes strength, and his job is to make fear run far on little fuel. He knows the rules. If a slave runs, the house must show that running hurts everyone. That lesson is older than any man in the yard. He also knows that anger makes men stupid, and men made stupid break what they need to use tomorrow. So he says the words that keep order steady. We were robbed, he tells them. When one of you runs, the rest carry his theft. Remember it. He gestures to the strap, to the post, to the bare patch of dust. You will remember. The strap falls in pattern, not deep enough to split skin, deep enough to write a page the body reads all day. The woman who wore the yoke takes her turn and looks at a point on the wall. The scribe takes his turn and counts inside. He does not fight the knots. Fighting turns lines to tears and tears to fever. He knows the math of pain. Then the steward does something he has not done in years. He picks two men at random, neither scribe, neither woman, and tells a boy to heat a small iron brand in the kitchen fire. The brand is not the letter F. This house does not mark foreheads. The master does not like the look at dinner. It is a little house mark, to be set on the upper arm, small enough to cover with a sleeve and large enough to sting the mind when cloth is lifted. He orders it done slow. Not to ruin, to remember. The boy holds the iron with tongs. The tip goes from black to dull red to a bright, mean orange. The two men stand very still, because standing still is sometimes the only dignity left. The smell that rises is a smell no one forgets. The lines tighten. Backs become planks. No one speaks. The steward's face is stone. In the doorway, the vilica, the steward's wife, watches with a closed mouth and eyes that say she will not sleep well tonight. This is the price of a door, the yard understands. One man's opening becomes many men's marks. In the town, the woman's husband snorts awake and stumps from his mat to the back room, scratching his belly. He grumbles about heat, wood, taxes, and the price of flour. He does not see Felix. He does not know the floor above the cool earth hides another kind of fire. He shoves a lump of dough with a fist and eats a piece raw. He gags and laughs and spits. The woman says nothing. She has said it all already, years ago, and learned that only work answers her. The street shuffles louder. Boys call that they have figs. A man calls that he has knives. A woman calls that she has combs. A pig breaks loose and two men run after it with faces bunched in anger they will laugh at later. The watchmen, vigiles by night, stationarii by day, change shifts. Cloaks change colour from dark to the dusty reds and browns of day. A man with a small board and chalk walks and writes numbers on doors, rent due, grain due, name due. Felix watches the little window. A boy appears with a broom and sweeps the alley. He is thin and fast. He whistles a little, off key. He glances up once, quick as a dart. He sweeps past. 10 heartbeats, he sweeps back. Felix slides to the back door and waits. The latch lifts with a soft click. The woman's hand touches his forearm and squeezes once. A small go pressed into skin. He steps into the alley with his head down and eyes open. The boy is already halfway to the lane. He does not look back. Felix follows at the exact distance a man follows a boy who is not his, near enough to keep sight, far enough to be nothing. They turn left, then right again into a passage that is less a street than a scar between buildings. Laundry hangs like flags of a country that is always at war with dirt. The boy taps the ground twice with the broom, then leans it against a wall and scratches his ear. From a shadow, a man as round as a barrel steps out, wipes his hands on a stained apron and nods. A tanner. The air around him stinks of old hides and sharp urine and the sour bite of tannin. "Quick," the tanner says without saying please or why. He is not soft, he is useful. He opens a low door into a yard where skins hang on racks like ghost shirts. He points to a pile of hides and a tub. "Under," he says. "Breathe slow." Felix slides under the hides and does as told. The world becomes wet leather and acid and the slow slap of a paddle in a vat. He shares air with flies. He is not proud. He is alive. The tanner dips a hide and lifts it and curses that the sun is weak and sets it again and mutters about costs. He is loud on purpose. A loud man hiding a quiet man sounds like an honest complainant. He adjusts a rack so it falls with a clatter. A moment later, boots scrape on stone outside the yard. "Open," a voice says, bored and hard. "Watchman." The tanner opens. He always opens. What is it? He asks, as if he does not see the world every day. A man, the watchman says. Run away. Market Square says a steward came at dawn with dogs and coin. We look. I smell only my work, the tanner says, spreading his hands. The gesture says empty. The smell says go away. He points to tubs. Want to look? He smiles without mirth. I will not fish your boots if you slip. The watchmen peer in, put hands to noses, and decide to be brave another day. If you see a man with a collar mark or a chain ring, one says, send word to the gate. There's a reward. 2 small coins now, more when we hang him on a post. Felix hears that from under the hides, and repeats in his head a lesson he has known since he was young. Rome pays for order. It buys eyes. A poor eye becomes rich for a day by selling a man. When the boots fade, the tanner lifts one edge of the hides and lets clean air touch Felix's face like a blessing. Out, he says, quick, and wash here. He points to a bucket where old wood ash has soaked. Ash water eats smell. Dogs follow smell. Felix scrubs his arms, neck and ring. The ash makes his skin grey. The tanner nods. Good, he says. Grey is what we are. He points over the wall to a roof that nearly touches the next. 2 houses over, a rope hangs. Cross there. Drop in the dye yard. Keep to the stream side after. The boy will show you. I owe the baker's wife a debt. Now I pay. What debt? Felix asks. Because knowledge is also a road. The tanner's face hardens like a cured hide. Once, my sister's child, he says. No more words. Felix bows his head once. I will carry no words from here, he says, and he means it. He takes the boy's hand and lets himself be led through stink and steam and over a low wall and across 2 roofs where pigeons complain. He drops into a dye yard where vats of red and yellow and brown look like quiet ponds. He crosses, eyes on the next thing, as the woman told him. He becomes a man moving dyes, then a man pushing a cart, then no one at all. On the estate, the steward finishes the morning of remembering. He tells the viliker to cut herbs for wet cloths and to prepare a thin barley soup with honey for the worst of the backs. He is not kind. He is careful. Sick bodies work less. He sends a boy to the smith, bring the small chain with the lock. He walks to the storehouse and counts oil jars again, because every wound in his house must be matched to a number somewhere. Order is his god, even when it eats him. He then does the thing he has never done. He calls the scribe to the small room and shuts the door and sets the strap on the table and does not touch it. He says, "Talk." The scribe stands straight. He is thin, his eyes dark with nights of counting. "About what?" he asks, in a voice that tries to be flat and almost succeeds. "You watched my hand on the locks," the steward says. "You always watch hands. Did you copy a key?" The scribe's heart stumbles in his chest, then finds a steady pace. He thinks of the olive wood in the hem, and the woman's face, and Felix's scar, and a hawk. He thinks of Roman law, that a slave's words mean little to a magistrate unless pain makes them true, and of the trap that lives in that rule. He thinks of the house rule that pain is cheaper than truth. He answers with a small truth that hides a larger one. "I watch," he says. "That is my work. I do not need a key to open a door when I have your habits." He meets the steward's eye. "A habit is a key," he adds, and it is not a joke. The steward studies him. He thinks of the cut rope at the back gate and the quiet olive wood taste in the keyhole. He thinks of the woman's raw shoulder. He thinks of the brand he ordered this morning and what it will do to 2 men when heat meets sweat this afternoon. He thinks finally of the city story, the mass killing after a master's murder, and feels something cold run along his arm like water spilled. He could send for the small cords and the weights and begin the questions, the household's cheaper version of the city's torture rooms. He could tie fingers and twist and pinch until words seep. He has done it before. The law smiles on such acts. A master's steward is a law inside a wall. He does not. He says instead, "If I sell you, your lines will feed another house. If I break you, my numbers suffer. If I trust you, I look like a fool if you make me one." He rubs his face. He is very, very tired. "The dogs are out," he says. "The town has coin. If Felix is clever, he is already beyond the gate. If he is not, we will find him. If we find him, the master will want wood and nails, because the neighbor used them yesterday, and men love to match men. If that happens, I will look at the post and see a man I knew and not wood. I do not want that." The scribe says nothing. There is nothing he can say that will not break on the steward's wall. "Go," the steward says at last. "Write the tallies, make no new keys, and if you put your clever hands to anything, put them to numbers that keep food in bowls." The scribe bows once and goes out. His legs feel like thin sticks. He is not safe. He is not doomed. He is a man in a house made of rules and habits and fear, and he has a small, soft key stitched into his hem like a prayer. In town, the boy with the broom lets Felix into a low shed by the stream. The air is cool. Water talks against stones. The boy's eyes are bright with mischief and hope. "Boat," he whispers. "At noon, a vegetable boat goes down river. The old man who rows is deaf on one side and angry on both. He hates stewards more than dogs. He will take a pig if it pays. If he thinks you are a pig under a cloth, that is enough. He will pay you under cloth, that is enough." Felix smiles, thin and surprised. "Why help me?" he asks. The boy shrugs. "Because she asked," he says, meaning the baker's wife. "Because my father took coin once to tell on a man, and he drank it in a day and cried in the night for a month, and I do not want to be like that. Because it makes me feel tall. He scratches his ear. Because I can." Felix puts a hand on the boy's shoulder. "You are tall," he says, and it is not flattery. They wait. Waiting is a craft. Felix learns the stream's grammar. Ducks talk, frogs pluck, boys splash, women rinse cloth and wring it with a twist that could break a wrist if a wrist were a rag. He hears boots once, and the boy shakes his head. "Not yet," and they go past. He hears the harsh cough of a man who smoked bad leaf as a youth and never stopped. He hears the bell from the small shrine where a priest lets ring for an offering. He hears the word rain sung once, drawn out long in a market tune, and the boy's hand clamps his arm and pins him to shadow. 2 watchmen stroll by, one scratching, one boasting. They do not look down. At noon, the vegetable boat noses the bank. It is low and wide, with baskets of greens and a crate of onions and a heap of dirty carrots that smell like earth after a storm. The old rower has shoulders like carved oak and a face like leather left in sun too long. He squints with one eye and glares with the other. The boy speaks fast in the rower's bad ear. The rower spits and shrugs and ties the boat with a rope that has known 3 dozen knots and forgot all their names. He lets the boy tie another, better one. "Under," he grunts at Felix, jerking his chin at the greens. "Do not sneeze, do not die, I hate corpses." Felix slides into the greens. The old man covers him like a farmer covers a plant from frost. He sets onions near Felix's face to confuse noses. He grunts again. He pushes the boat off with a long pole. The boat sighs as river takes it, then hums as the oars bite. The town slides by, a rim of stone and noise, and then opens to banks where willow branches comb the air. At the estate, the master receives a message from the town gate captain on a wax tablet, neat as pride. No man past the gate, the line says, but the stream is a thief's friend. The master swears in a polite voice that keeps his teeth white. He orders a horse. He orders a second group to the ferry. He tells the steward to send a boy to the shrine with a coin for the god who keeps doors. So he will keep my doors and close others. He pretends it is pious. It is insurance. The steward nods and sends the coin because gods, like watchmen, like to be paid, and he will not waste a friend where he can buy one. He also does one more thing. He writes on a scrap of wood a simple line and puts it under a jar in the kitchen where the village will find it when she lifts the jar to grind herbs. Stop the strap. He is not soft, he is not brave, he is tired. Tired men sometimes step to the side of a wide road for the length of a breath. On the river, the old man rows with steady strokes. He spits when a fly lands on his lip. He glares at a pair of boatmen who call him grandfather too sweetly. He keeps to the left bank, where reeds hide him from the road. Twice he ducks under low bridges, where boys lean and laugh and drop bits of bread to see if ducks or dogs will get them. Once he runs the boat nose into a clump of grass and pretends to fix the pole, while a patrol of 3 men with javelins watches the water and sees nothing but their reflections. Under the greens, Felix does not sneeze, he does not move. He thinks small thoughts, the feel of a seed between fingers, the sound a jar lid makes when bitumen seal breaks, the crack of a yoke on a shoulder, the soft thud of a key biting iron, the way a hawk rides a line of air, the taste of bread that did, in fact, taste like rain. In the town, the baker's wife wipes a table until the wood is a clean, dark mirror. She kneads dough for the next batch with arms that look thin but are strong. Her husband complains that the bread looks small today. She says nothing. He kicks a stool. She says nothing. He goes out to tell lies to a man who sells dates. She blows hair from her face and laughs once without sound, because laughter without sound is safe. At the estate, the day grows hot. The bran marks swell and shine. The villager changes cloths and hums a low tune that might be from childhood or might be from today, no one knows. The scribe writes tallies with a hand that does not shake, because work is a tall wall that holds up the sky. The woman ties herbs in bundles and hangs them to dry. She looks at the back gate once and then looks away, keeping her rule. The steward walks the yard and looks at faces, like tablets he must read. The master rides out and looks at fields like coin he must count. The dogs sleep with paws twitching, hunting something they always catch, only in dreams. By late afternoon, the vegetable boat slides under a willow, where a path steps down to the water and a small shrine sits with its god's face rubbed smooth by thousands of hands. The old man noses in. He does not call. He waits. A cart creaks down the path with a woman in a grey cloak on the bench. Grey is a colour that asks no questions. The woman lifts a sack of carrot tops and dumps it into the boat, and lifts a second sack and dumps it, and then sets a third with care. "Heavy!" she says loudly for anyone who listens. Her lips say a different word, small as breath. Wait. The old man spits again, because spitting is a language. He shoves off and floats to the far bank, where reeds hide a flat bit of ground. He crouches, loosens the greens like a man freeing a trapped bird, and Felix slides into mud and shadow. The old man does not look at him. "You are a poor onion," he mutters, "but you will do." He rows away, already part of another story. Felix lies in reeds and counts his heartbeats to make sure they stay. He hears the cart creak off. He hears a beetle push through dry stalks with a sound like paper rubbed. He hears, faint, a dog bark far upriver, and a man answer without words. He crawls to the path and looks for the next thing. There it is, a low bridge of cut stone, with a narrow tunnel under the road, and a trickle of water that smells of clay. Beyond the bridge, a line of poplars points to hills. Hills mean goats and small farms and tracks no one counts. He slips into the tunnel. It is wet and cold and tastes of iron. On the far side he stands, shakes mud from sandals and walks to the poplars as if he belongs with them. Behind him, in town, two watchmen argue about whether the old man's boat smelled too much like onion for this time of year. One shrugs. "Everything smells like onion," he says. "My wife, my house, my pay." The other laughs. They go to drink. On the estate, the master returns at dusk. Face stiff, cloak dusty, he dismounts and hands the reins to a boy. He says to the steward, "Any word?" The steward says, "River." The master says a word the boy is not allowed to say in the yard. He orders, "Post bills in town. Offer double coin for the head or for the body. If found alive, I will make an example to match the neighbours." The steward nods. He knows what match means now. It means nails. It means a road and a lesson. He feels the words in his stomach and does not share them with his face. The scribe hears the order and feels his hands go cold. The woman hears and sets her jaw. She thinks of fig roots and keys and boys with brooms and old men with boats and of the way stories travel faster than feet. She says nothing. She ties another bundle of herbs and very carefully does not cut the thread too short, because short threads are wasteful, and she is not wasteful. Night will come again. Somewhere upriver, a man will walk, not in circles, but in lines that wander and still move forward. Somewhere in a kitchen, a woman will lift a board and find nothing under it but earth and air, and be both sad and glad, and not know which is strongest. Somewhere in a small room, a tired man who keeps order will sit on a stool and rub his eyes and see behind his lids a hawk that does not care about law. And in the morning after that, at the market gate, a new board will be nailed to a post with neat letters. Runaway slave, male, scar on neck, iron ring at ankle, reward for information, return to, followed by the master's name and estate. The letters are sharp, the wood is smooth, the message is clear. But the world is not a post, it is a river. Posts stand, rivers move. Felix climbs a low rise and looks back only once, not at the estate, not at the town, but at the line where sky meets land. He thinks of a simple thing. A choice is a door. A door has two sides. One side is cost, one side is hope. He has paid a price, others have paid. He knows this like he knows the shape of his own hands. He does not know yet what hope will cost next. He looks ahead. The next thing is a shepherd's hut and smoke that smells of goat dung and thyme. The next thing after that is a track that loses itself in stones. The next thing after that is a hill where eagles ride. He takes a step, then another. Behind him, at the estate, the steward opens his hand and finds the morning's brandmarks still in his nose. He goes to the ergastulum door and stands long enough that the guard begins to fidget. He says nothing. He is not praying. He is listening for a sound the grammar of fear never taught him to hear. At the river bend below the town, a patrol of 3 men with javelins steps down to the water. One squats and touches a crushed onion green, lifts it, sniffs and frowns. He points. The others follow his finger. Upstream, reeds lean. A track the width of a man's thigh shows where something slid ashore. The tallest man smiles with half his mouth. "We have him," he says. Do they? The 3 men with javelins stand at the reed bed and smile, as if they are already paid. The tallest points to the slide in the mud, to the crushed green, to the faint onion smell that hangs like a thin line in the air. Upstream, he says. He climbed there. They move with the lazy skill of men who have done this many times. They do not hurry. Hurrying makes noise. Noise makes rabbits jump and dogs bark and men run when you want them to stumble. The tallest walks the bank, eyes dropping to the ground, rising to scan the trees, dropping again. The second tests the mud with a stick and grunts when it gives the same way twice. The third listens, because men who hunt forget that listening hunts better than looking. If they had come an hour sooner, they might have seen a flatboat push off, or a grey-cloaked woman leave a sack that was not all carrot tops. If they had come a little later, the mud line might have faded. But they are here now, and sign is still fresh enough to speak. They leave the river and climb to the road, then drop into the low tunnel and come up on the far side, where the poplars begin. They find a footprint at the tunnel mouth. Bare sandal, simple weave, not a townsman's soft shoe. They find a thumb smear on the stone where a man steadied himself as he rose. They follow. Up the rise, Felix moves as the woman told him to move, looking not back at the wall of fear, but ahead to the next thing. First the poplars, then the shepherd's hut, then the high path that folds like a ribbon on the hill's side. He keeps the ditch side when a cart rattles past. He steps off the road when two boys push geese with switches and shout. He becomes shadow when a lone herder whistles for a dog, and the dog answers from brush with a wag you can hear. By the time the patrol reaches the first bend, Felix has crossed into a small fold of ground where stones lie like sleeping sheep and time grows between them. Wind comes off the hill with the clean, dry breath of places where grapes will not grow, only small trees with twisted hands and birds with sharp eyes. He breathes the wind and feels his chest loosen, even as his ankle ring presses and the leather pad warms with skin. At the shepherd's hut, a woman steps into the doorframe and looks at him with the quick psalm of a life that has counted men at a distance. She is not young, not old. Her hair is tied with a bit of wool. Her hands are brown with sun. A child peers from behind her thigh with goat-bright eyes. Felix lifts his empty hands to shoulder height, old sign, old care, and bows his head the way a man bows before he asks for a cup of water. "I will not bring trouble to your door," he says. "If trouble follows, I will keep walking." She does not answer that. She looks at his ankle, at the leather-wrapped ring, and the quiet wedge in the chain. She looks at his hands, at the small calluses that say mill and rope and press, not knife or javelin. She lifts her chin toward the goat pen. "Water there," she says. "A gourd hangs inside. Do not let the kid out. He runs like a sin." Felix drinks. He keeps the gourd steady, even though his hands want to shake like sapling leaves in wind. Water is the first blessing. Being allowed to drink is the second. The child comes nearer. The child's nose wrinkles. "You smell like old onions," the child says, very serious. Felix smiles with the thin surprise of a man who forgot his face could, then nods. "It kept dogs from loving me too much," he says. The woman tilts her head. "Who sent you?" she asks. He thinks of saying no one, because to name is to pull someone else into the net. He thinks of saying the baker's wife, because truth said quiet sometimes spends less blood than a lie said loud. He says only bread and touches his chest with two fingers, as if tasting rain. She watches the fingers, not the word, and something in her shoulder loosens. "My sister's daughter married the tanner's son," she says, as if talking of wool prices, not of ropes cut and boats rowed. "If you go up over the saddle you see from that rock, you will come to a track that looks like a goat path and is not. It runs behind the next ridge. It takes you to a spring and a shrine with a stone god that is only a head. People rub its forehead and wish for better rain. Men put coins there. You will find a small coin under the head. My husband's joke with the god when the goats were thin 3 winters ago. Take it. A man without a coin in his hand is a man someone else can name." Felix bows. "I will not take your luck," he says. She nods once. "I have luck enough," she answers. "I have my door, you have none." The child, braver now, touches the leather at Felix's ankle. "Does it hurt?" the child asks. "Only when I forget it," Felix says. "Then do not forget it," the child says, as if giving a clever gift. The woman points to a narrow notch in the ridge. "Go," she says, "and do not walk the top. Men who hunt like to see heads against sky." Felix goes. He walks the sheep side of the path, where stones wobble and feet find noise, but eyes from the road do not. A raven crosses the sun and becomes for a breath a black door on light. He passes a small cairn where someone left 3 pebbles and a sprig of thyme. He adds a pebble, because men need to be part of something even when they are running alone. Behind him, the patrol comes up slow. They ask at a farm. The farmer points to the road and lifts a hand as if to say, "The hills swallow footsteps." They ask at the shepherd's hut. The woman puts a hand on the kid's head and says, "Goats," and the kid bleats like a bad liar. The men sniff the air. They smell goat and ash and thyme. Onion is gone. They grumble. The tallest squints at the ridge. He sees a raven, then nothing. He spits and swears that he saw something a moment ago, which is Rome's general story. We almost had it. By noon, the hill track drops to a spring. Water burbles from rock into a shallow basin green with moss. The shrine is a rough block with a face worn smooth by years of hands. Eyes faint as dreams, nose a ghost, mouth a dent. People have wedged bits of wool into a crack in the stone, a long prayer in many colours. Under the god's chin sits a small round coin, dull with age and weather. Felix looks at the coin as a man looks at a trap and at a blessing. He picks it up and feels its weight. A coin is more than metal. It is a name you can use at a stall. It is a pass at a ferry. It is proof to yourself that your hands still close on something that is not wood or rope. He kisses his fingers lightly and touches the stone god's smooth brow and says nothing, because he has used up all his asking for the day. The spring's water is cold enough to wake a dead thought. He washes his face and his hands. He soaks the leather at his ankle so the pad will cool and not rub the skin raw. He drinks. He sits with his back to a rock and closes his eyes for 10 breaths and does not sleep, because a sleeping man in Rome's country is a coin lying on a road. He hears hoofbeats far off. He opens his eyes. On the ridge opposite, 3 dots move, small as seeds. He stands and steps into brush and becomes a bush, which is the simplest magic men can do. The riders pass along the far slope and go down to the road below. Patrols like roads, roads like patrols, paths like Felix. By late afternoon the hills open to low country, a patchwork of little farms, each a knife slice of land kept alive by hands that know when to cut and when to bind. Smoke in low strands, a low bell, a woman beating a rug, a child dragging a stick in dust and drawing a chariot with crooked wheels. Felix keeps to boundaries, fence shadow, ditch side, the back of a stone wall where lizards sleep. He walks the world like a sentence with commas for breath and no period yet. Twice he hears men and ducks into scrub and becomes part of it. Once he walks near a flock of sheep and the sheep absorb him, the way water takes ink, slow then gone. At dusk he reaches a crossroads where a small shrine to the god of travellers stands, Mercury with his hat and tiny wings, painted with a hand that is not skilled but is careful. Someone has set a tray with stale bread and figs. Someone has scratched a prayer, "Keep my son safe." Someone else has scratched an answer later, "He came home." Felix touches the edge of the tray and takes the smallest piece of bread because he believes that gods who feed strangers like to be included in good deeds after. He eats. He sets the shepherd's coin on the tray, and then, because he is still a slave in his bones and coins mean rations, he lifts it again and leaves one dried fig instead. The god, he thinks, will not mind the trade if the man lives to make more. The road from the crossroads runs toward a town that is not the first town, a place where people do not yet know of a board nailed that morning with neat letters and a reward. He does not want a town yet. He wants a night. He chooses a copse of small oaks near a dry stream bed and makes a nest the way a fox makes a nest. Scrape, circle, lie. He pulls scrub over his body, leaves his face open to air, lies with one hand on the leather-wrapped ring, as if holding a sleeping child, and tells himself 3 small stories to keep the large ones from crushing him. The first story is of a hawk that rode air at a crossroads and did not care about law. The second is of a wooden key that bit iron twice and learned to be a tooth. The third is of a woman who said, "My brother was a man," and turned a bakery into a door. He sleeps. On the estate the same night, the master eats with a friend and with a smooth face tells the friend about ungrateful men. The friend nods and calls for more wine and says that the city's baths will open a new hot room and one must go. In the yard, the villika changes the cloths on 2 arms with small house marks and hums so the sound will push their pain a little away. The scribe lifts his tunic hem under the lamp and, with careful stitches pulled with teeth, moves the olive wood key from the hem to a new seam, because the old seam has begun to fray, and a frayed seam is a mouth that shouts. The steward sits on his stool and counts aloud to no one: goat pen beam, back gate rope, pig yard stake, fig root crack. When he reaches fig root crack, he stops. He goes to the wall with a shovel. He digs out a bit of the root and packs mortar with his own hands. He does not call boys to do it. He does not write it on the scribe's tablet. He wants to feel a small thing mended while a large thing cannot be. In the first town, a board hangs with letters that say scar and ring and reward. People read, some nod, some do the math of coin against conscience and feel sick, and choose conscience for now, which is a small victory the board does not count. The baker's wife kneads and sells and watches her door the way a woman watches a sleeping child, out of the corner of her eye. The tanner scrapes hides and swears at flies and teaches the boy with the broom a knot that will hold in rain. The old rower mutters that greens were lighter than they should have been, and that onions are poor pillows, then smiles when no one can see. At dawn, a farmer with a cart offers Felix a ride if he will lift 2 sacks at the bridge and keep his head down. Felix lifts, he keeps his head down. The farmer does not ask his name. He tells him instead a long story about a sick mule and a neighbor with bad wine, and how the gods answer slow but sure if you burn a bit of cheese on a clean stone and look sad in the right way. They part at a fork where the farmer goes right and Felix goes left, and both men feel taller because men feel taller when they help and are helped. By midday, Felix reaches a place where the road joins a big road paved with stone. He stops. The big road is Rome itself. Straight, hard, full of feet and wheels and eyes. On the side of the road, a little shrine to the goddess of crossing sits, its paint peeling. People toss pebbles at its base when they step from grass to stone. He tosses his pebble and says to the goddess in his head, "Watch my feet." He steps on the stone. It feels like a ship plank under a man who has only walked dirt. It feels like power pressed into ground by hands he will never see. It feels like the thing he is running from and the thing he must use to run farther. He matches his stride to the road's rhythm. He becomes one more man walking with a bundle on his shoulder, not the thin flash of a runaway cutting fields. He walks with pace, not speed. Men with pace are paid. Men who sprint are chased. A milestone says a town lies ahead by the sea road where ships cough and low men shout in many tongues. He cannot risk a port. Ports are eyes. He takes a smaller road again where olives groan under nets and men curse the wind. He drinks at a public fountain, and a woman with a child gives him the child's cup after the child drinks, and that sound is the sound of a country that is bigger than fear for one breath. That night he sleeps in a ruined kiln with bats in the roof and fire ghosts on the walls. He dreams that he is turning a mill round and round, and then the circle opens and becomes a line, and he is walking, and the weight on his shoulder is only air, and he wakes with tears on his face and does not wipe them because there is no one to hide from but himself. On the third day he reaches a place where the land folds into a small valley with an old boundary, a low wall built when a man alive now was a child, and before that when a man dead now was a child, and before that before. A woman with grey hair and hands like roots sits on the wall and shells beans. She looks up and sees him and does not look away. She sees the ring and the leather and the quiet wedge, and she sets a bean aside, then another, as if making a count. "You will not find a magistrate here," she says, not unkind. "You will not find a fax for papers either," she adds, as if joking with words she does not know. Felix smiles, the smallest of their day, and says, "I am looking for a night without a post." She nods toward a lean-to against the goat shed. "There is dry straw," she says. "There is a bucket. There is a task. My fence is broken where boys jump. Fix it. Work is the straw a man can sleep under without lying." He fixes the fence. He does it with care because a fence that breaks again the next wind is a lie. While he works, a boy comes and watches, and then holds a peg and then lifts a rail, and then thinks he did the whole fence with his arms, and goes to brag to a dog who believes him. In the morning, Felix moves on, with a heel of bread and a bit of cheese the size of a coin, and hands that smell of resin and wood. He does not stop moving. He makes his shape small in places where eyes count, large in places where hands are needed. He trades a morning's digging for a noon's bread. He trades a roof mended for a cup of oil to soften the leather at his ankle. He learns to step with his ring so that it is a part of him, not a sound. He does not become free. Rome does not let a body like his become free by walking, but Rome is large, and between its stones and laws are miles of grass and faces and doors that open a finger's width, when a person inside remembers a brother, a son, a husband, a child, who was a man and not a price. Weeks later, in a town where the reward board never came and the sheriff is lazy and the priest is busy with a cracked roof, a man, called by a new name, counts fish in a basket by a river and hands the smallest to a child for free. He wears a cloth at his ankle for the swelling, and no one asks why it never goes down. His hands still smell of rope and oil. He wakes sometimes in the night and reaches for a chain that is not there, and then touches his own chest and feels his heart and says, "I am here." He works. He keeps his head down and his eyes up. Sometimes he lifts his face to the hill and watches a hawk ride like a flat blade on air and smiles, because some lessons do not break. Back on the estate, the reward brings in men with hungry faces and boys with stories, and one drunk who says he saw a ghost that looked like a millstone walking on two legs. No one brings Felix. The master complains and then forgets, because men who have food forget hunger unless their own plate is late. The steward remembers. He mends what he can mend, cracks in walls, bad latches, habits that might be keys in other hands. He tells the master that nails and wood are slow and expensive and make neighbours talk. He suggests rope and quarry if the next runaway is caught. It is not kindness. It is a calculation that hides a wish to live and not see what nails do to a face you know. The scribe lives. He writes. At Winter's festival he puts on the master's hat for 1 hour, not because the game has meaning, but because it lets men practice standing upright for 60 minutes without a lash. He keeps the olive wood key wrapped in cloth in a hole behind a stone near the press, not for himself now, but because a tool is a kind of hope. And hope, even in houses like this, needs to be stored safely. The woman who once wore the yoke heals. The scars on her shoulder are pale ropes. She teaches a girl how to tie herb bundles so that they do not split on damp days. When the girl asks why, she answers, "So the work holds." And the girl thinks she is talking about time. Rome goes on. Ships load, roads hum, baths steam. Laws pass with neat words and good wax seals. A senator speaks in the House about mercy, and men nod and then go home and tell stewards to run their houses firm. A prefect orders a patrol to walk the river road more often because a town complained. A poet writes a line about fate and slaves and masters and the wheel of fortune. People clap. A slave stands behind a pillar and holds a tray until his hand shakes and no one sees. And yet, under the smooth words and the hard stones, something keeps refusing to be nailed down. It is a small thing, a boy with a broom who walks twice and whistles off-key. It is a larger thing, a steward who, too tired to be cruel for a moment, writes "stop" on a scrap of wood and hides it under a jar. It is a quiet thing, a woman who lifts a floorboard and says "bread" that tastes like rain, and decides that her brother's face matters more than a coin. It is an old thing, a shepherd pointing not to law, not to road, but to a knot in a ridge and saying, "Walk below the sky." It is a stubborn thing, a man who, with a ring on his ankle and a chain quieted with leather, chooses to take one more step toward a door he cannot see. It is a stronger thing, a truth that even the Romans knew but did not speak aloud, that fear works until it does not, and when it does not, law is only wood and rope and coins and talk. The brutal reality of Roman slave punishments was not only the lash, the brand, the collar, the cross, the mines, the hard names. It was the way these became normal sounds, normal sights, normal words, grammar for a world built on other people's backs. It was the way a child learned to look at a man with a mark and not flinch because flinching had a price. It was the way mercy was called a favor and not a right, so the giver felt godlike and the receiver felt small. But the other reality, quieter, softer, hidden in kitchens and alleys and fields, was that people kept giving each other little doors, a key, a cup, a sign, a look, a word. Those doors did not topple Rome. They did not tear down its laws. They did not save everyone. They did, however, keep alive the part of a person that punishment was designed to kill. The part that says, "I am more than a number on a tablet. I am not only pain. I am not a price." If you stand even now on a Roman road where stones still show, and you listen past the cars and the modern clatter, you might hear the old sounds: strap, key, dog, mill, thin as wind. You might also hear, if you listen longer, the other sound, the small, steady step of someone choosing the next thing and then the next, and not looking back to the wall. This is not a tale with a clean victory. Rome did not stop because one man slipped past a gate. The Appian Way kept its crosses in memory long after wood rotted. But stories like this carry a weight that iron cannot. They remind us that systems are built out of choices and choices and habits can be changed. They remind us that even in a world that makes fear a language, people still speak kindness, caution, courage, and craft. Remember the questions that carried us. What happens when fear stops working? What breaks, not backs, but spells? Often it is not a shout, it is a quiet refusal, repeated. It is a baker's hand on a latch, a tanner's hand on a hide, a boy's hand on a broom, a steward's hand on a root, a fugitive's hand on his own ankle, feeling the ring, choosing to move anyway. The Romans tried to nail down the world. Some things will never be nailed down.